The worst thing you can do is not have your music available to someone that wants to hear it, because that's an opportunity to either convert or continue evolving a fan. And so I would say artists should have their music everywhere.
Welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast, where successful music industry experts share their industry secrets that will help you take your music career to the next level.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, my name's Rodney Holder and thank you so much for joining me on my podcast here at musicbusinessfacts.com. For those of you who are new to the show, perhaps you don't know me, I used to be a drummer. I was a drummer and a manager of a heavy metal band called Alchemist, and we were around for about 20 years and we released plenty of records and toured the world and all that good fun stuff. I'm also an ex-concert promoter and I used to promote the largest and longest running Australian metal festival in Australia called Metal for the Brain, and now I teach music business at TAFE College, which I really love, and I've been doing that for 20 years as well. I also manage a couple of artists now, and of course I produce this podcast. Anyhow, it's been a while since I've had a release of the podcast, but I am back and I am armed with a slew of great interviews with some awesome music industry experts, as well as some successful music business practitioners. And as always, my goal with this show, guys, is to help you guys, the listeners, give you insights into how you can establish and grow a successful career in the often brutal world that is the music business. Anyhow, before I get into today's lecture, I want to give you guys a free gift. I feel like it's been a while since I've given you something. And way back in episode 37, which I recommend you do go check out, I interviewed an English band manager, a guy named Andy Farrow, who I've since become good friends with. And anyhow, Andy's an absolute legend. He manages really successful metal bands like Opeth and Devin Townsend and Paradise Lost and Anathema and a slew of other great bands. And anyhow, that particular episode back in 37, it's been one of my most downloaded episodes. And Andy really is a supreme wealth of knowledge when it comes to knowing about the music industry and also music business entrepreneurship. He's a very, very successful entrepreneur. So if you're interested in that episode, go back and check it out, and I'll put that in the show notes. But a while back, Andy was in Australia and I invited him to come and present a masterclass at my college. And at the college, I pulled out the iPhone and filmed it. And I've turned that masterclass into a free online mini course. And I really encourage you to go and check it out because it's full of gold nuggets about, little tips and tricks about what you can do to monetize in the music business and get your shit together, basically, how you can get overseas. There's a whole heap of stuff. So go and check it out, guys. It's all free, 100%. It's at musicbusinesslecture.com. Now, some of you might know that I did end up doing a fully fledged online course with Andy, which has been fantastic as well. So there is that available, and there's a little upsell at the end. But if you're not interested in that, just go check out the free stuff again at musicbusinesslecture.com. All right, so before I get on to today's interview with Phil Bauer, I wanted to briefly talk about an incredibly important topic in music business, and that's digital distribution. Now, in 2018, most of us all know that it's the way to go. It's obviously already here in a big way, and it's going to get even bigger in the future. And of course, as a part of that, we need to know as much as we can about digital distribution as we possibly can, because it's such an important and evolving topic. So as a songwriter or a manager or a label owner, you know that you need to get your music on the main distribution platform. So, you've got to be on iTunes, you've got to be on Apple Music, you've got to be on Spotify, you've got to be on Shazam, Google Play, etc., etc. And most of those companies, or in fact all of those companies as far as I know, they don't want to deal with individuals. So you have to choose an aggregator. So a digital aggregator is one of the companies that you can go to basically, set you up on all of those platforms and collect all of your royalties and do all that distribution for you. Now, there's quite a few companies that you can choose from, as I said, but certainly one of the main players who's been around in the game from the very start is CD Baby. And that brings me to my guest today, Mr. Phil Bauer. Phil is the Director of New Business Development at CD Baby. I was lucky enough to catch up with Phil in a busy pub last year at the Big Sound Music Conference here in Brisbane, Australia. So the interview is a bit noisy, but I think you'll still enjoy it, and I think you can still hear what he has to say. Phil was a great guy, really interesting bloke, really tall guy, 6'6". I was on my tiptoes interviewing him. But also just gave me a really great insight into not only what CD Baby does in their company, but just digital distribution in general as well. So really great interview. I really hope you enjoy it, and I'll speak to you on the other side of the podcast. But without further ado, here's my interview with Phil Bauer. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here today at Big Sound, and I'm with Mr. Phil Bauer, who's the Director of New Business Development for CD Baby. Phil, thanks so much for joining me on the show, mate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here and glad to be talking to you.
So, Phil, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself personally, and then tell us about CD Baby for anyone who doesn't know what the company does.
Sure. So personally, I've been at CD Baby for 10 years. Got started as an artist selling my music on the service to begin with. Actually lived down here in Melbourne for a stint, 2001 to 2003. Got back to where I was living, Portland, Oregon. A band I was in, we were starting to sell our music. We had our CDs, we wanted to get it out. First got that through, on CD Baby. Didn't even know it was based in Portland. I, at the time, held the proud title of being the tallest white rapper in Portland, Oregon. I would say the entire Pacific Northwest.
How tall are you for our listeners?
So I'm 6'6", and lanky as ever. And so, we actually just used CD Baby as a service. Found out it was in Portland, quickly got interested, got a job there, and have been there 10 years since, kind of working in every capacity. And what we do is, we think of ourselves as an artist service platform. I think digital distribution is clearly what we're going to be known most for, which is if an artist needs to get their music into Apple or Spotify or monetize their music when it's used on YouTube. We help with that day in and day out. We are working with nearly 500,000 artists globally, bringing on new ones each and every day. And but over the past few years, we've really, realized in kind of this new music business economy, it's not just about getting the music on the services. It's about, increasing the scope of the opportunities that you can help artists, be empowered to take advantage of, and what monetization opportunities you can sort of participate in with them that they might not have access to themselves. So, really, while distribution's our backbone, we've, in the past few years, expanded into publishing administration, so we can help artists collect all their mechanical royalties globally. We have a large YouTube monetization team where we can help you, earn money whenever someone else uses your music on YouTube, or if you have a channel that you're building, some subscriber base with and an audience. We have a network you can join, and then we help with, some optimization strategies and some audience building strategies there. And then recently, we just acquired a company that I'm personally very excited about late last year called Show.co. It's a music marketing platform. It's really geared toward helping artists not just promote their music or their art, because it could be a video, it could be a song, but also kind of understand the conversion rate, learn about who those artists or who those fans were, where they came from, and then collect their email addresses at the same time, and really build your list and make sure every time you're doing something, it's sort of amassing, ultimately, this directory. So each time you're putting some new stuff out, you're hitting maximum reach. And so that we finished that acquisition late last year, and just in March of this year made that a free option for anyone that distributes through CD Baby. Gets a free account to Show.co. All the majors use it; they pay for it. The Orchard Network, a lot of these key organizations that are working in artist development are utilizing this tool, and then we made that a free add-on to our distribution as well.
Mate, sounds
long-winded, but a long-winded answer.
No, that's fantastic. There's so much in there, and of course, the professional title for CD Baby is an aggregator. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I think that's sort of like the black and white, technical answer. It's clearly much more than that. I mean, we're at this interesting point where music and technology are intertwined and work, each have to support one another. To me, an aggregator just sort of sounds like this vacuum cleaner that inhales a bunch of content and then spits it out somewhere. And we're certainly much more than that. I mean, we have 130 people working for us based out of our Portland, Oregon office. One of them's in New York. He'd be upset if I didn't mention that. And of that, 40 of them work on our support team and are taking calls and answering emails and engaging in chats with our artists every single day of the week. and it's not just answers like, hey, how do I sign up for your service? It's, hey, now my music's up on Spotify, it's up on Apple, what next? And we're here to sort of talk through some strategies, what we're seeing that's working for other artists, what we think might help them, and really take an invested interest in making it a relationship.
Excellent. And we should mention, of course, that the reason that we would use CD Baby or any of the other aggregators, which you probably don't want to talk about, but
we're good with all of them. I'd say, our goal is artists need solutions. They need value-providing services. We think we're a good one. If we're the right one for an artist, we want to do our best work for them. If we're not, there's no sour grapes. It's not like we're territorial. This isn't a hard sell from us. It's really about fostering the creative opportunity for artists to be able to continue, sort of focusing on the creative side of what they do and not having to focus as much on sort of that administrative side, and the more services that are doing good work, the more creative output there can be, the more artists are going to be incentivized to make music, and then that just creates a much better place. So we're not we don't have this adversarial sort of thought, because we're all working toward the same place, and so long that they're providing a good service, we want artists to have that kind of access. Competition's good for the artists, so that's
No, look, that's really good, and it's very diplomatic, and we'll get onto that in a sec, but I guess I just wanted to say that the reason we need you guys is because companies like Spotify and Apple Music, they don't want to deal directly with artists, do they? There'd be too many artists, there'd be too much paperwork or digital work.
I think it would just be too complex. I mean, look, I just said we have 130 people and 40 of them are a support team. Things are complex enough with building the technology, securing the licensing, selling the advertising, or encouraging the subscribers. Everyone kind of has their role in the chain, and we think we serve an important one. And yeah, to your point, it's sort of outside the scope of what a service should be focusing on, because they should be focusing on the service and attracting customers to it, so that these musicians have an outlet to be heard.
Yeah, sure. And artists do have a lot of choice, so I would like you to talk to the listener and say, well, when we are faced with, do we go with CD Baby, do we go with TuneCore, do we go with Ditto Music, do we go with Reverb Nation? Try and sell it. Why would we choose CD Baby over some of your competitors?
I think it's just what I was saying, our commitment to it being an engaging experience. It's not a one and done. We're not a faceless company. If you have an issue, we're here to talk through it. If you have a question, we're here to provide an opinion or some advice to the best of our abilities. But we're also continually investing in new ways outside of the distribution side of things that we can be providing value, that we can help artists maximize, different platforms. I think our DIY musician blog is bar none one of the best educational resources out there for artists. I think our marketing team just does a fantastic job with that, and really just staying kind of on the forefront of what platforms there are, and then sort of translating not just what these platforms are, but then also using them and then providing some actionable advice, like here's how this pertains to you. It isn't just sort of a bunch of headlines and buzzwords, So I'd say, at the base level, we all just do the same thing, and it's gotten pretty commoditized, to be honest with you. So we're a value provider. We focus on that. We focus on widening the scope of the value that we do provide and the services we offer, and we're going to keep doing that. And I think that's what's helped us sort of endure. I mean, since '98, selling CDs on a website all the way through to nearly 8 million songs distributed by half billion artists. That's pretty impressive stats. And I would like to second what you said about your learning resources, and I would actually encourage all of my listeners to go and check out the CD Baby DIY stuff. For instance, there's a great podcast. I can't remember the name of the guy that runs it, but he's Kevin Bruner, our VP of marketing, and he's great. A musician himself, so everything kind of comes from a perspective of understanding.
Yeah, I've reached out to Kevin before, and I will again. Also, some great listeners, great PDFs as well. So, you can download all this free stuff on touring tips and how to make money from YouTube, and really, really great stuff. So make sure you go and check it out. Where was I going? Yes. The business model for CD Baby. So, Phil, can you tell us if someone decides, okay, this guy sounds great and the company sounds amazing, we're going to go with CD Baby, how does the business model work? What does an artist need to do?
Yeah, so we, as you're signing up, we take a one-time upfront fee, just sort of for the processing of the music and getting everything from inbound to distributed to the platforms, and then an ongoing 9% commission on sales. So no annual fee, a one-time upfront, and then 9% back in.
And is the one-time upfront, is that per song or per album or collection of songs?
So if it's a single, it's per song, but it's identified as a single. Otherwise, it's per album. Yeah.
And if I'm a label, can I do a deal with you if I've got like 10 bands, or is that's just the way it is?
It's just the way it is. Certainly, we can have a working relationship to where we can, try and optimize things for the label to make the logistics of it easier. But our model is same for an artist as it is for a label.
Cool, very good. Phil, you talked about once you've taken an act on board and we're working together, you go much deeper and you talk about strategies. Can you talk about some of the strategies that an artist can expect to receive from you once they sign up with you guys?
Yeah, I think right now the primary one is just, especially with how many different platforms there are, and that it's sort of pivoted from a sale to a listen, and it's less about having a one-time sale and it's more about having an ongoing listening relationship. It's branding. It's very, at its basic core, it's understanding the concepts and the discipline around creating a brand for yourself as the artist. And then as you're leveraging all these multiple platforms out there, whether it's the socials, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, all this stuff, it's having a cohesive voice. It's making sure what you're doing is reinforcing a brand. It's building in your audience, and your audience comes to know what to expect from your brand, comes to start to feel a familiarity and an engagement with that brand, and then the music really is sort of that carrot that's getting them hooked and getting them interested. But it's just not about blasting out song after song and expecting people that don't feel a connection to it to just go on and spend their time listening to it. In the past, you might have been able to encourage a one-time sale, but now it's about encouraging a building connection and engagement with your audience, and that needs to keep growing and building over time, and that requires some consistency and some effort put in how you're positioning yourself and making sure you're not selling 100% of the time, you're selling X% of the time and conversing the rest. And make it interesting for them to want to get to know you. Sure.
I've heard a lot of people in your space talk about the importance of getting on playlists to help get discovered. Can you give us some advice on how you would do that? Or is that up to you guys, or is it something the artist does? I'm curious.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg a little bit, I think. Playlists certainly have kind of replaced what used to be, like front page of iTunes or something. What these placements in a sale aspect maybe got pitched for. But it's just not, it's not as easy as having a song, pitching a playlist, and it gets on. There still needs to be some hook, whether it's a story, whether it's an established, listener base. Sometimes, and it's rare, there's going to be that just gem that everyone latches onto without any understanding of it beforehand. But for me, it's less... I would encourage an artist to focus less on getting their music in a playlist and more on building the story and building the audience to start getting some attention toward their music, so that when they're pitching a playlist, they have a compelling hook that's gonna help them get added to it. And then outside of that, it's Spotify's doing a lot, algorithmically, so it's a lot of that is just, it's going to need to get some traction before it's going to get considered. And so to do that, again, it sort of relates back to this ongoing cumulative effect of building your audience, building your fan base, and then getting shots at that. So it's certainly extremely important and has a lot of potential to take an artist from A to B, but you got to get to A first. You don't start at A, Can
I buy my way onto a playlist? Can I give you a big pile of cash and...
Not with us, you can't. I'm sure there's some playlisters out there that might allow that. We pitch routinely for playlists and for placements, but it's not we don't accept any donations for it.
Bribes.
Well, you talked about building an audience then to try and, do that. Here's the $1 million question. If in your experience, and you've been a musician and now you're in this great position, what advice have you got for the artist that goes, well, we think we're good and we've got good songs, but no one's latching on? What are some of the strategies that you can provide to help build that audience? Got any?
I think first, and this is where, us musicians, I think a lot of times have the assumption that we're all extroverted, but maybe in real life we're a bit of introverts, and music is where we become extroverted. I think it's networking. I think it's building a network. I think it's finding other artists or other scenes that you think you should resonate in or that you feel like you should align with, and making effort to be present, to be out, to be networking and building relationships within those scenes or with those other artists, and using that as a springboard, because then it's where there's smoke there's fire kind of thing. And if you can start to latch on in a scene that you feel you should, that's just going to help. And then it's a step at a time. You don't go from 0 to millionaire. You go from 0 to 100 to a couple hundred to 1,000, and being patient, but also being deliberate like that. And then if after multiple attempts that's not happening, well, maybe there's another discussion to be had.
No, look, that's fantastic, because you use words like networking, you use words like patience, being deliberate, setting goals. These are common themes that my listeners, I want you to digest, because you can hear that all of my guests are saying the same thing. So, and it's not easy, right? But it's what you got to do.
It's not easy. People might make it look easy, but that's because I think we're used to seeing the finished product and not seeing the work in progress,
I want to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here, Phil. I hope you don't mind, but what do you say to some of the detractors from CD Baby? And they say, well, CD Baby's great and it's amazing and it's one of the original ones, but you're really going to be a small fish in a massive pond because you guys are so big. Have you got a comeback for that one?
Call us, talk to us, and let us prove that wrong. Again, that's one of the areas that we hang our hat on. So a big fish in a small pond just means we're employing economies of scale. We're helping you get to where you need to get. If the music resonates, it's differentiated. Certainly, let us know. We have a submission form for getting stuff pitched to the DSPs, and we listen to everything that submits through that form. But anybody that calls us, we're going to give them the exact amount of time as the next person, and again, that is a point of differentiation that we're willing, to get behind.
Okay, that's cool. I think I meant a small fish in a big pond. Is that what I said?
I could barely hear what you were saying, so I heard what you meant, not what you said.
Very good. I read somewhere that Tracy Maddox, your chief exec, said that in some ways you were anti-label, I suppose, because in some sense you facilitate being independent.
Yeah, not that we're an anti-label or we're against labels. It's that we just don't feel that a label is always a necessary component to success, and we've seen that time and time again, and it all. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it all comes back to this audience building. And YouTube, to us, is one of the most powerful platforms right now, where, it's kind of like this, a call is always better than an email, and in-person is always better than a call, and you feel more connected and you understand context better. And we think of YouTube as sort of that the closest to in-person that you can get outside of meeting at a tour, or, just on the street. And that's a place where artists that use our platform have found tremendous success, just being engaging, being personalities, and building these massive audiences on places like YouTube. Coming to us, we had an artist last year. It's a YouTube sort of sensation. They're called Ninja Sex Party, and they have a massive YouTube following. They're musicians. They came through us. We sort of worked with them a bit on the front end and set up a pre-order campaign where they were going to sign their CDs. And within 1 month, they sold enough CDs, compact discs, that they were number 9 on Billboard. And this is where Adele was number 1. And this was through the strength of this audience that they've built, and they didn't need a label to go out and run radio for them, to set up publicity. They have the means, and we're working on them with an upcoming album later this year. They have the means now to to hire all these pieces and sort of be their own label, and then we get to play a component of that campaign team to make sure that their content is ingested, delivered, and pitched and ready to go on street date, so all these other efforts they're stringing together can be, maximize that.
That's pretty awesome, Phil. What about artists from Australia? Like you said, do you have offices here or anything yet? Or
well, we don't. We're certainly looking to be more present down here in the future, and this is kind of the kickoff point. To be honest, we were having a conversation about 4 weeks ago, having this renewed interest in getting down here, and Big Sound was just right around the corner. We said, this looks like the place to be so that we can best understand what value we can provide to Australian and New Zealand-based artists. And so I booked a ticket straight after that meeting, came down, and just been having a blast. This is a great conference. I'm meeting so many cool people, and I really appreciate this community feel that the industry has down here, and we look forward to supporting more and more Australian artists in the future.
That's great. That's really great. What advice do you have to any artists or managers that are coming to conferences, whether it's Big Sound or anywhere around the world?
Again, it's with have purpose. Don't travel, and I see this a lot more at South by because South by Southwest, because I go there more frequently, but you see these artists that sort of view that as the achievement, and then they get there and they play this day show that's half empty, and people are there because there's free tacos and they're not really paying attention, and then they sort of tick the box like we played South by Southwest, but really that just ended up being a poor investment for them. So it's have a purpose. So I'm not a musician right now, but like correlating it to me, my purpose is to come down here and learn. So I made sure that I budgeted enough time that I could go to the panels, that I could speak to people and make sure that if I saw some key people I wanted to meet with, I secured that ahead of time. So it's sort of strategizing that way. Like, why are we there? Are we ready to be there? If yes, okay, well then, let's make sure we don't just get a showcase, but we get a quality showcase. Let's make sure that at the showcase we have some invitations going out and people that we want to see us are going to be there. Then in the daytime, here's some people we need, some gaps in our campaign team or, some connections we feel like would be really fruitful for us. So let's make sure we get meetings and they're not just, these happenstance things at a bar while there's a band playing and you're yelling through over a drink.
Look, that's some really great advice there, and I love how you came back to that. It's all about relationships, right? Building relationships again.
Yeah, again, that's it's often overlooked that the music industry is a relationships first business. Yeah.
When does an artist know if they're ready or not to come and join up with CD Baby? Is there a specific time? Or?
The instant that they've finished recording a song, they're ready to sign up with CD Baby. We will work with artists at any stage of their career arc, whether that's the absolute beginning, the peak, or the twilight. So, there's no barrier to working with us, and like I said before, we're going to support each and every artist, along the way. So
awesome, Phil. Hey, Phil, what's the largest streaming royalty you've seen? Can you give us insight?
Dollar-wise, well, I don't know if I have any figures exactly offhand, but I will say
7 figures
to one artist, or sure, yeah, we've seen that. I mean, our artists collectively are earning well over 7 figures a month from a streaming service alone. So, not one artist 7 figures, but collectively our artists. Streaming has finally sort of turned the page. I don't think the discussion is whether or not to embrace streaming. It's more, how do we embrace streaming and then now what, the industry's back in a period of growth, and it's attributable to streaming. Spotify and Apple for us each month, are neck and neck. They're, it's a proven model. I think a lot can be obsessed over the amount of the one individual stream, and not as much can be, the awareness isn't there that, again, this sort of prolongs the life of every song. It's not a week one, try and get as many sales engorged as you can in that few days, and then afterwards you just sort of shove that album off to the side and get popping on the next one. Catalog titles have come to life. It's enabled this singles market where you can sort of test, as you're working on an album and you want to know, you don't maybe necessarily have an artistic decision on what that album's going to sound like. You can start to tease singles out and see what resonates and see what your fans like, and sort of use that as just real world data, to factor into how you're developing as an artist.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I've also heard managers tell me on the show that they can tell where their strengths are in terms of territories by the way they're streaming. So whether or not they need to focus more on touring on a particular territory to build it up, or maybe they're streaming in an area they didn't expect, and then they know they've got to go there to play live.
I think one of the things I like about streaming is there's an honesty to it. It sort of tears down the transaction, the purchase, and it really makes it about whether or not you enjoy the music. So when you're finding territories where you're getting listened to heavily, you know that it's not just a bunch of people were really convinced with the marketing that you put forward to buy it. You know that it's being listened to, and those are people that want to hear you and want to potentially hear more from you. So yeah, that should be directing an artist's strategy and kind of how they focus on which territories or which demographics their music resonates with. And that's another thing we provide in our dashboard is really comprehensive streaming analytics up to the 2 days prior, and it's daily. And we break down by geography, we break down by age, by gender, by device type. It's really informative, and artists should be looking at that and should be using that to direct, we did this marketing campaign during these dates and we think it should have had this type of impact. Let's just pop up our trending real quick and see what our Spotify numbers look like, or Apple Music numbers. Data is a powerful thing, and that is being ushered in with the streaming adoption.
Yeah, look, that's really powerful. I wanted to ask you, do you think there's room for both Apple Music and Spotify, or do you think one of them's...
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not going to be like VHS beta cassettes from the old days and one's going to go?
You mean Apple Music and iTunes, or Apple Music and Spotify?
Apple Music and Spotify. Do you think there's going to be sort of two, most powerful companies, or is one going to try and kill the other?
It's tough to predict. I would hope that there's going to be competition, because again, that's always good for the artist. That keeps the services honest, and that keeps the awareness. Because while the pages turn, I think from an industry perspective, certainly on the consumer side, no one streaming service has hit like a Netflix level. So there's still room to grow from consumer awareness and adoption. The more of these juggernaut brands that are getting behind it and having their own service, the better that's gonna help just really set the hook on getting consumers to adopt.
And of course, I love that, juggernaut brands. That was a good term. Of course, as from an artist and management perspective, you want to be across all of them, don't you? No matter how big or small.
Yep, absolutely. And if you find you have an audience that's catering to one, you may want to develop strategies that maybe direct more preferentially toward that, but you don't want to. The worst thing you can do is not have your music available to someone that wants to hear it, because that's an opportunity to either convert or continue evolving a fan. And so I would say artists should have their music everywhere. And if they want to focus on one, they maybe are focusing their marketing efforts on it, but they're certainly not doing that at the expense of being available on all the others too.
Yep, brilliant. Derek Sivers, the founder of your company, a very inspirational entrepreneur. Have you met the guy?
Absolutely. So I started right before we ended up getting sold, so a couple years. So I got to work with him. Toward the end, he had relocated to the UK primarily, and would still come and drop back in. But yeah, just like you said, very charismatic, very inspiring. It really, he created this independent pathway, and a lot of these, companies have came out and sort of evolved and cascaded off that to the benefit of artists, and that was his vision, and I'm thankful for it.
Absolutely. Any chance you can hook me up with an interview with him?
I don't have a direct line to him. I was only there for that little bit, but I would keep trying. He claims to read each and every email he sent. So
I have actually emailed Derek, and he wrote back to me and said, really busy right now writing a book. Write back to me in 1 year. So I've got it in my diary when to write back.
There you go.
Listen, Phil, it's been great to talk to you. I really appreciated it. You've been a wealth of knowledge, very inspiring, and I'm sure that the listeners have got something out of it. Just before we wrap it up, is there anything that I didn't ask you that perhaps I should have, or anything else that you'd like to get across to the Music Business Facts listeners at all?
No, I thought honestly thought that was very comprehensive. You know, for me, from a business perspective, from a CD Baby plug perspective, I would just love any artist that's on the fence or you know just about to make that decision about what distributor to use to reach out to us and let us put our money where our mouth is and answer any questions you have and make sure we're the right fit for you.
And what's the best way to get in touch with you, Phil, if someone's listening to this and they want to?
I would start with emailing our support team, cdbaby@cdbaby.com. Pretty easy one.
Okay, and I'll obviously put all that into the show notes. Well, listen, Phil Bauer, Director of New Music Business Development for CD Baby, thanks so much for your time. It's been brilliant to meet you, and I really appreciate you giving such wisdom on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
We're shaking hands again. Okay. Cheers, mate.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Phil Bauer, spelt Bauer, who is the Director of New Business Development over at CD Baby. Please let me know your thoughts. I always love to hear from you guys, and you can feel free to email me anytime. My address is rodney@musicbusinessfacts.com. And I'll always do my best to get back to you. I always try to. I don't always achieve that, but I'll always try. Just going over a couple of the resources that Phil mentioned during the interview, and I'll have these over at my podcast show notes at musicbusinessfacts.com. He talked about the CD Baby acquired music marketing company at show.co. So I don't know a lot about that. I've just had a bit of a look, and I'm going to go and look a little bit more into that. Then, of course, there's the DIY Musician podcast, which, again, I would totally recommend going and checking those guys out, and that's at diymusician.cdbaby.com. And then, of course, if you want to get in touch with CD Baby and you want them to perhaps be your aggregator, you want to get them looking out for your music and getting you online, go and speak to the people over at cdbaby@cdbaby.com. So that's cdbaby@cdbaby.com. And finally, don't forget that I've got this great little mini course that I'm really encouraging all of my listeners to go and check out. It's my interview with Andy Farrow, legendary artist, manager, and entrepreneur. And that's a 100% free course, which you can find at musicbusinesslecture.com. So a lot of URLs there. I know if you're listening, you might forget some of those, but like I said, you can always go over to my show notes and check them out. Well, that's the end of today's show. It feels really good to be back. Thanks so much for having me in your speakers or your headphones, and wherever you are in the world. I always, like I said, love hearing about where you listen to me. I always find that interesting, so feel free to tweet me at MusicBizFacts if you want to tell me where you actually listen to me when I'm talking to you. I'm going to be back very, very soon with another episode. I've made a bit of a pact with myself to do this a lot more regularly, and I've actually got 20 interviews in the bank all ready to go, so I've just got to sort of cut them up and edit them up and get them out there to you. And in those 20 interviews, I've also got a couple of interesting ones from a while back, which I wasn't going to, for whatever reason, publish, and I just decided, you know what, I'm going to get all of my stuff out there and try and bring you guys as much value as I possibly can in 2018. So I can promise you there's some very, very interesting stuff coming up, some really cool interviews. And until you hear from me next time, I'd like to leave you with this great quote from the late and, in my opinion, great Jim Rohn, and it's about goal setting, which is very, very important, people. It's still very early in the year, and one of the reoccurring things that I've discovered from interviewing successful people and successful entrepreneurs is that they all have the same advice to me, saying goal setting is so incredibly important, so you've got to do it. So Jim Rohn said, goals, there's no telling what you can do when you get inspired by them. There's no telling what you can do when you believe in them, and there's no telling what will happen when you actually act upon them. So if you haven't set out your goals and written them down, get them down, people. Write them down, make them real, and act upon them. And until next time, this is Rodney Holder signing off for musicbusinessfacts.com. Look after yourself, and I'll see you very soon. Over and out.
You've been listening to the Music Business Facts podcast. For more essential music business tips and information, visit musicbusinessfacts.com.